Four-star Messiah Delhomme secures the best class of the decade for Maryland football.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Maryland football secures another four-star commit, and I think officially we can say that this is the best class in a decade for Maryland football. I was going back and I was going through the rankings, and I was really thinking about it, and I was like, this is the best class Maryland has had in a decade. In this 2025 class, I really do believe that this has the chance to be one of the more special classes that we have seen Maryland football have. And it all starts with another four-star commit that we just landed in Messiah Delhomme. Messiah Delhomme is one of the top players in the entire country. And honestly, I came on here on Friday, I think it was it was Friday or Thursday. I talked about how the Terps' next biggest target was Messiah Delhomme. But I honestly didn't think that we had a realistic shot at landing him. All the signs were pointing to Ohio State, and I really thought he was going to end up at Ohio State. But somehow Maryland continues to come through at the end of these recruiting battles, and we were able to land him. And so I thought it was going to be Ohio State for the longest time. I don't know if something fell through with Ohio State. I don't know what the deal was with Ohio State. But all I know is I heard that Ohio State was the favorite, and I didn't really know exactly where Maryland fell in terms of the race for Messiah Delhomme. But now that we have landed the four-star, technically he's listed as an athlete on 247, but he is projected to play safety at the next level. I believe that this really completes the Maryland 2025 class. And there's a couple other guys on the board, one in particular in the McFadden kid who's also on the offensive line that I think can bring our class to a whole nother level. He's also favored to go to Ohio State, but I think there's a couple other kids as well. But now that we've landed Messiah Delhomme, I can confidently say this is the best class that I have seen the Terps have in a decade. Like, I have not seen the Terps have this good of a class for the last 10 years. And that's about as long as I've really been a fan for the Terps. And so this is really the best class I've seen of my lifetime. There was one class that Coach Durkin had back when he was the head coach of the Terps. That was a really good class that I was looking back at, and I was like, okay, this class I can see maybe is similar in terms of the rating. When I went back and looked, and I said, okay, maybe you would consider this the best class that Maryland has had in the last decade, but it honestly is close. It was the class in 2017 where they had a really strong class for Maryland football with landing guys like Anthony McFarland, and they got a kid, Marquise Bell, who was supposed to be really good, and Cam Spence, and they had some really good players in that class, a bunch of four stars types of players, headlined by Anthony McFarland, of course, who ended up being a really good player for Maryland football. But that class, technically, in terms of the ranking, was higher. But when I look at this class that Maryland has this year, I think it's the best class that the Terps have had in a decade. And I even think that it's a better class than that 2017 class. I really do. I believe that Messiah Delhomme completes his class for a couple of different reasons. I told you guys that we don't have a safety in this class. We don't have a highly rated safety. We don't have a safety at all in this 2025 class. So I was like, okay, Messiah Delhomme, if we don't land him, it's all right. This class is still really strong. But if we do land him, it's a complete class. Like, I go through all the different position groups, and we have a guy at every single level that I believe is going to be an impact player at the next level when I really looked at it. Besides really safety. Other than safety, I thought we had an impact player, but I thought last year we got one of the best safeties in the 2024 class, who I've been saying, Messiah Delhomme, has a chance to pair up with Brandon Jacobs and make one of the best safety duos in the Big Ten. And we've been used to having some pretty good safeties at Maryland, whether it's Nick Cross, whether it's been Bo Braid, whether it's been Dante Trader. We've had some pretty good safeties over the years, but I think that Messiah Delhomme, who we just landed, 4-star, 6'1", almost 200 pounds, combined with Brandon Jacobs, who will have a year in the system, both will have the chance to lead this Terps teams in the back end for the next couple of years. Because when we look at it, Dante Trader and Glendon Miller are gone next year. And so I think that Messiah and Brandon Jacobs are going to have a chance to come in and, well, Brandon's already there, but Messiah is going to have a chance to come into the Terps and really potentially start right away. I think that this is why it was so important to land him, and part of why I believe that it's a really strong class, and the best class that we've seen the Terps have is because Messiah is going to come in and potentially play right away. And I think that's something that's going to be really cool. But when you look at every single level of the team, every single level of the 2025 class, we have a player at every single level that I think is really high level. That's why I believe it's the best class. Like, we have our quarterback in Malik Washington, who headlines the class, 4-star, ranked as a top 10 quarterback in the class, 4 in the state of Maryland, maybe 3, depending on where you look. And then we have a bunch of really good running backs, 4-star Iverson Howard, who's a 4-star on some websites, Zymir Smith, who's a 4-star, who's recently committed to Bama, could slide in at running back, but I don't know exactly where he'll play, along with Bud Combs, a really good player at running back. And then I continue to go down the list, and you look at things, and you look at, receiver, we have a guy like Justin Devon, and that's a position group that we've recruited really well. And then as well as offensive line, Jalen Gilchrist as well. And I can keep on going throughout the team. But we land a top-rated player in we rate a top-rated player in the state of Virginia, and we just landed another player in the state of Virginia, of course, in Jalen Gilchrist, who's also a top-rated player in the state of Virginia. So Maryland dominated the state of Virginia for the first time in a while. Like, I don't remember the last time we get two of the top 4 players in the state of Virginia. Like, that's pretty big time, because of course those are going to be some of the top players in the nation. So you got to compete with the Blue Buds, you got to compete with the Bamas and the Georgias, and the Clemsons of the world, for guys like Jalen Gilchrist, of course, who considered Georgia, and then Messiah Delhomme, who considered a blue blood like Ohio State. So to get some of those top players in Virginia, you have to compete with some of the blue bloods. And so for Maryland to come away with Messiah Delhomme, I think it's a pretty big deal for the Terps, and it's a pretty special opportunity for the Terps 2025 class, I think, to be the best class of the decades for the Terps. More about this Maryland 2025 class and how it really transcends this football program, I will talk about that after this ad from eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep a ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. This 2025 class has a chance to really transcend this Maryland program. We haven't had a class like this under Coach Loxley, and I think this is the class that we've been waiting for. And this is what it shows me. Winning does a lot for your program. Winning does a lot, because I've seen a Maryland program that went from being terrible in a horrible spot, and then Coach Loxley getting hired, us getting Talia Tungviola, who I think deserves a lot of credit for some of this recruiting success. Believe it or not, I think Talia is, if we don't land Talia, I don't know if we're as successful as a program as we've been the last couple of years. And I think you got to thank Talia at least a good amount for some of this recruiting success, because we've had 3 straight bowl games. We've won 3 straight bowl games. We've had 3 straight winning seasons. And everybody in the Big Ten and everyone across the country can't say that. They just can't. And so the Terps have started putting winning on the field. And when the winning starts happening, you see that you can land some of these top-rated recruits in the class of 2025. When you start winning bowl games, when you beat an Auburn type of team in a bowl game, when you have the all-time Big Ten passing leader, when you start doing some of these things, you can accumulate difference-making talent. I think that Maryland was doing an awesome job at developing really solid players, like 3-star rated recruits. And obviously the recruiting rankings don't mean everything, but they were doing a good job of developing like 3-star rated guys into, a lot of them into really good, solid Big Ten starters. But once you get your hands on some of these 4-star rated players, I'm excited to see what Coach Loxley can do with those types of guys, to see what he can do with a guy up front like Jalen Gilchrist, who's rated as a top 100 player and in a top 3 interior offensive lineman. I'm excited to see what he can do along the offensive line and see how Coach Loxley and the rest of the staff can develop a guy like that up front. I'm excited what they're going to be able to do like with that. I'm excited to see especially what he's going to be able to do with a 4-star quarterback, Malik Washington, who I think has a chance to be even better than Talia was, to be honest. I think he's a little bit more talented. I think that Talia came in as a really natural quarterback and a natural thrower of the ball, but he wasn't like supremely talented. That's why I didn't see him getting drafted to the NFL. And that's why I don't think he's in the NFL right now, is because I don't think that you looked at him and you're saying he has all the traits. He has all of these like arm talent. Like Talia was just a guy that was a natural thrower of the football. He didn't throw the ball really hard. Like he didn't have every throw in the bag. He didn't have that, but he knew how to play the quarterback position, and he did a really good job at it. But I'm excited to see what Coach Loxley can do with a kid like Malik Washington, who, I think is really talented. I think he's more talented than Talia. Is he going to be as good? Time will tell. I think he will be, but we still have a long way to go. And so I want to see what Coach Loxley can do with a 2025 class that is really special. And to continue on about Malik Washington, to see what he can do with a kid that's 6'4", with a big time arm and has dual threat ability. A guy that's 6'4", 215, and can still grow into his frame and is a really good athlete. It's going to be really cool to see what Coach Loxley can do with a guy like that. We haven't had a guy in the quarterback spot who's come in. It's really his guy that he's recruited out of high school that has been that type of player. And so you look and you continue to go down and you say, I want to see what Coach Williams, if he's still here, can do with the 4-star safety and Messiah Delhomme. I want to see what the staff can do with 4-star athlete Zymir Smith. I want to see what they can do with some of these guys, because I think this 2025 class really can transcend the Maryland program and bring it to a place that it hasn't been. It can bring Coach Loxley to a place that it hasn't been. And I've seen him talk about this 10-win season and to make the playoff this year. And I don't know if that's realistic, to be completely honest, with this year's team. But in the future, nothing's off the table if you continue to recruit at a top 25 level like Maryland is with this 2025 class. I'm going to talk about more about that with the 2026 class a little bit later. But if they continue to recruit at a top 25 level that they are, like they are this year, then there's nothing holding the Terps back from being potentially maybe a playoff team in the future, potentially being a 10-win team, potentially continuing to win bowl games. to reach a new height of the Big Ten that we haven't seen this program. I don't think anything's holding you back from that because you're in a hotbed area for recruits. You're going to continue to recruit in the DMV area where it's some of the top rated type of guys. You're going to continue to get guys in Florida, and if you can continue to recruit Virginia like you did this year and recruit Maryland like you did this year, and if it can continue to get better, then that's where you really are going to start to strike gold as the Terps program, because it always is going to start with recruiting in college football. That's just what it is. That's why a lot of college coaches don't like college, and some of them switch to the pro, and some football coaches just prefer the pros because recruiting is hard. It's a really hard experience, and the pros, you don't have to worry about it. You send your name in, you say who you want to draft, and you send the slip in. You don't have to worry about recruiting and going all over the country and finding guys, because that's what the top programs are able to do. They're able to recruit at a really high level. And so it's really hard to be able to do that. But if you continue to recruit at this top 25 type of level, then there's nobody stopping the Terps from bringing a top class or a top team for the foreseeable future. And it might take a couple of classes to stack. Like, these guys aren't going to come in as freshmen and just be all Big Ten type of guys. Like, that's not how it's going to work. But a couple years down the line, if you can start stacking classes together and start continuing to recruit like the Maryland class, like the 2025 classes, then I think that you're going to be in a really good spot in the Big Ten, because when you look at it every single year, the teams that are at the top of the recruiting are always the teams that are the best teams. Like, it's just what it is. If you look back, Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, those are the teams that recruit at the high-end level, and those are the teams that are usually the best, and that's just how it's been. And right now, Maryland's sitting at 23 in the recruiting rankings with 6 4-stars. And when you start to looking at the Big Ten programs ahead of them, there's still a lot of them, but there's plenty of them behind them. And it's a lot of the blue bloods that are higher than them. You look at it, it's like Ohio State's higher than us. Oregon, which is weird seeing them as a Big Ten program, they're higher than us. Who else is higher than us? Penn State, Michigan's higher than us in the recruiting rankings. USC's a couple spots, Rutgers, Washington, but there are plenty of programs that are behind us. And these are some of the programs that Maryland wants to be better than, like a Wisconsin's behind us, like a Nebraska is behind us. There's other teams that are right behind us, but we want to continue to beat them out for recruits. Indiana's pretty far behind us, a team that we want to continue to be better than. So I'm looking at the Terps and I'm saying this 2025 class can really, really change what the Terps team is about and can potentially lead us to places like a playoff with the new 12-team playoff. You can't rule that out if you're starting to recruit at this kind of level for the Terps. And with the coaching that I think we have seen from Coach Loxley. Can the 2026 class keep up with this 2025 class? I will talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So make sure everyone go head over to FanDuel.com and start making most of your summer. Summer's also running down. So when you get to the fall, I know a lot of you guys like to bet on football. So make sure you look at FanDuel, because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Realistically, can the Maryland 2026 class be similar to the Maryland 2025 class? I think that's a really interesting question, and I think that it can be. I don't see why it can't be. I want to talk about one thing that has to be happening for Maryland to be able to get some of these guys to be on the recruiting roll like they have been on. I think you got to think that Maryland's NIL has been stepping up. I don't want to say that's the reason why we've been landing guys, but I feel like it's a fair assessment. Something's been going on with the NIL, because I've been looking at it in terms of basketball and football. The classes have been getting really good for this 2024 into this 2025. Like landing 5-star Derek Queen, I was like, okay, that's really good. But it's like, is that purely just we were able to land them, or has Maryland's NIL been able to step up? Landing 4-star Malik Washington, Jalen Gilchrist, Messiah Delhomme, flipping Zymir Smith. I'd like to think that the NIL has stepped up a little bit. I'm not saying that's the only reason why, but that's the biggest reason why I think that we can continue to recruit the 2026 class, because something has flipped. You don't just land all these different guys and it's like, oh, yeah, Maryland's just landing these guys now. I know a lot of it I talked about is we've won 3 straight bowl games. We've done a lot of special things over the last couple of years. But still, you don't just land these guys from doing that. And so I think it's fair to say that our NIL has stepped up, and this year is going to be a huge year for Maryland football because a lot of the 2026s won't commit until after the football season. So it's going to be interesting to see where we kind of fit in on the schedule, where we fit in with things. But I think that the Terps 2026 class has a chance to be really similar to the 2025 class, and I don't see why it can't be. It should be a top 25 class. I think that's got to be the goal every single year you look at the Terps classes. I think you got to say, did we land in the top 25? If not, then you say we probably didn't do as good of a job as we wanted to. But if you did, then I think that's the perfect spot for where we want to be, is right headed in the top 25 for Maryland football in the top 25 classes. And the 2026 class is off to a good start with 2 commits, with Kamari Bing, who's a 2026 corner, from St. Francis, who's a really high-level player that a lot of different schools wanted in terms of Auburn offered him, Florida had offered him, and some other schools had offered him. So he was definitely a high-rated recruit. And we also got this underrated kid in Brian Harris from Florida, and continue that Florida connection that we've had, who was hurt last year. But I heard that this kid's a potential like freak type of athlete. So anytime you get those types of guys, you really want to definitely take advantage of when you can find underrated kids. And right now it's ranked as a 37th ranked class, and it's way too early to have really any idea of how the 2026 class is going to finish up. But I do believe that it should finish as a top 25 class. Again, I don't see why not, because there's plenty of players in the state of Maryland that are going to be really good in the DMV, that are going to be really good in the 2026 class. There's always going to be DMV guys. And if we can dominate Virginia like we just did with getting 2 of the top 5 players in Virginia, that's really cool. Like, we got the 3rd best and the 4th best player in the. So I'll be interested to see where this 2026 class lands. And then there's another thing that has to do with this 2025 class is you got to keep all these different guys, because signing day flips are very much alive. And I've seen Coach Loxley flip a couple guys. So that's always an opportunity for the Terps to flip a 2025, whether there's a couple guys that we missed out on that I think we potentially could flip later on that can continue to grow this 2025 class. But talking more about the 2026 class, I think you got to also be able to keep some of these guys. When you get some of these guys early on, like a Kamari Bing, who I think could potentially blow up next year, honestly, is a top-rated player, 12th-rated player in the state of Maryland. When you get a guy like that, like, there's a really good chance that eventually a team can come in later on and flip him just because it's an early commitment. But Tennessee also had offered this kid, and he visited Tennessee. So it's just interesting to see what can happen with the flips. Nothing's set in stone. And then you also got to be able to keep these guys when you get there. Those are the biggest thing that's going to take Maryland football to the next step and really enable them to be really good. So I think it's interesting. I think they have a chance to be special. But this Maryland 2026 class, I think, can be similar to the 2025 class and be a really elite class for the Maryland Terrapins. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. I'm really just